With a single stroke of the pen, I erased 20 years of a future. His future, not mine. The nib of the Mont Blanc, a gift from him for a birthday I've since forgotten, glided over the linen paper with a definitive coldness. Each curve of my name was a link in a chain being broken. Outside, the city paused, oblivious to the silent earthquake happening on the 32nd floor of this office. An empire on paper was being dismantled by a signature he himself had given me the power to make. Just 72 hours earlier, the air was thick with the smell of roasted meat and hypocrisy. In that dining room, under the weight of a crystal chandelier that always felt more like a cage than a decoration, he raised his glass. His family, a chorus of rehearsed smiles, awaited his blessing. And then he looked at me, a gaze I once mistook for love, but now recognized as that of an owner appraising a possession. He said I was a lucky, pretty face, and everyone laughed. In that moment, he didn't just sign our marriage's death certificate. He signed his own. He just didn't know it yet. He thought the greatest humiliation of my life would be my ruin. That I would drown in tears in our 300-square-foot closet. He had no idea it would become my greatest inheritance. This is the story of how one man's arrogance became a woman's declaration of independence, of how his contempt financed my freedom. If stories like this, of strength and emotional justice, inspire you, give this video a like and subscribe so you don't miss a thing. I spent most of my adult life as the peacemaker. It was a role I played with the dedication of an award-winning actress. I was the one who swallowed her pride to maintain harmony, the one who apologized for mistakes I didn't make just to avoid conflict. I remember once, early on, when he had a nasty argument with his brother over a business deal. I stepped in, took the blame for a misunderstanding, and allowed Ricardo to come out looking magnanimous, forgiving. He thanked me later with a kiss on the forehead, telling me I was his angel. But angels don't have their own voice. They just serve. I believed that love was a form of sacrifice, of yielding so that the weak could flourish. I spent my days watering his garden, not realizing it was planted on top of mine. Our life was, for all intents and purposes, a work of art, an all painting of unattainable happiness. The house, a giant of glass and concrete overlooking the city, felt more like a museum than a home. The parties were social events with more photographers than actual friends. And at the center of it all was Ricardo. Charming, brilliant, the provider. But his love came with fine print, an emotional contract I signed without reading. He made all the important decisions, especially the financial ones. I never saw a credit card bill, never attended an investment meeting. His line was always the same, delivered with a calculated tenderness. Let me handle this, my love. You don't need to worry about these boring things. It was his polite way of saying, your power ends where mine begins. Your intelligence is not required here. Today, I understand what the greatest relationship scholars try to teach us. That there are poisons that kill a love slowly, without leaving visible traces. The most lethal of all isn't anger. It's contempt. It's the feeling that the other person is inferior. And his contempt was an art form. It was subtle, elegant. A poison served in a baccarat crystal glass, which I drank every day, believing it to be the elixir of our success. It all began with the small deaths. The interruptions. We were at dinner with another couple, and I was excitedly telling a story about a trip we took to Tuscany. In the middle of my sentence, he cut me off with a smile. What Anna means to say, he told the couple, is that the logistics were flawless because I planned every detail. She gets lost even with a GPS. He laughed, they laughed, and I felt my face burn. Later that night, he brought me a glass of wine, said I was adorable when I got excited, and that he was just joking. And I, the peacemaker, accepted it. I drank the wine and swallowed the humiliation. Relief. Then came the car. I had been mentioning for months that I dreamed of a small convertible. Something just for me. On my birthday, he blindfolded me and led me to the garage. When I took the blindfold off, there was a gigantic black German SUV with a red bow on the hood. Surprise! He boomed. It was a car for the family we didn't have. A car that projected his image, not my dreams. My friends told me I was the luckiest woman in the world, And I, desperate to believe it, smiled and said it was perfect. But every time I drove that tank, I felt like an imposter in my own seat. Tension, false relief. The turning point before the final break was my idea. I had spent 6 months developing a business plan for a sustainable luxury brand I called Ethra. I researched the market, suppliers, created a presentation. One night, with my heart pounding with hope, I showed it to him. He flipped through the pages with an air of boredom. At the end, he looked at me with that condescending smile that both disarmed and wounded. "Oh, how cute," he said, stroking my hair. "It's a nice little hobby, my love, but the real world is a bit more complicated. Leave these business things to me, okay? You just keep being the dreamy artist I love." He didn't just invalidate my work. He put me back in the decorative wife box I was timidly trying to escape. My sister was the only one who dared to speak up. On a call, she was direct. "Anna, don't you see? He doesn't listen to you. He manages you. He doesn't support you. He allows you to have hobbies." Her voice was a bucket of cold water on my fantasy, and I reacted with the fury of someone defending their own captivity. "You don't understand our dynamic," I yelled. "He protects me. You're just jealous because your marriage isn't like mine." I hung up the phone shaking, not with anger at her, but with fear that she was right. To prove her wrong, I dove even deeper into my role. I organized the most perfect party, wore the most beautiful dress, smiled the widest smile. I was preparing myself for the slaughter, and I called it loyalty. You're halfway through this incredible transformation. If you're feeling honest strength, support us with a like and make sure you're subscribed to see how it all ends. And then, the annual lunch, the grand performance. The 6-meter mahogany table, polished to the point of reflecting our distorted faces. The air conditioning was freezing, but I felt a cold sweat on the back of my neck. The conversation revolved around investment funds, acquisitions, and power. I was a ghost at the head of the table. That's when my brother-in-law, a man with more ambition than character, turned to Ricardo and asked about the roaring success of the Valerius Fund. Ricardo wiped his mouth with a linen napkin, savoring the moment. He placed his hand on my shoulder, a gesture that seemed affectionate but was one of possession. And then he delivered the sentence with a broad smile for the whole table to hear. "We were lucky, of course," he said, "but the truth is, at the end of the day, a strategy needs a brain behind it. And I thank God every day that I married a pretty face who lets me make the right decisions." The silence that followed was louder than any scream. It was a complicit silence. I saw the satisfied smirk on my mother-in-law's face. I saw my brother-in-law's cowardly glance away. No one defended me. In that instant, the sound in the room disappeared. The silver fork in my hand felt like it weighed 100 pounds. The crystal chandelier above me shattered into 1,000 pieces of glass about to fall. It wasn't the insult that broke me. It was the audience. It was the realization that to everyone there, in that room that was an extension of my home, I wasn't a partner. I was a luxury accessory. And like any accessory, I could be discarded or replaced. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. Something inside me, a support beam I didn't even know I had, just cracked and snapped. And in its place, a chilling calm was born. The peacemaker was dead, and I didn't even go to her funeral. In the days that followed, silence was my weapon. Ricardo thought it was just another tantrum, that I needed an expensive gift to get over it. He had no idea I wasn't mourning our marriage. I was mourning the woman I had allowed to be erased, and I was busy planning her resurrection. In the dead of night, while he slept the sleep of the arrogant righteous, I went to the safe in his office. A safe I had the code to but was instructed never to open. The smell of old paper and leather filled my nostrils. And there, in a leather folder with his gold-embossed initials, I found my salvation. Documents I had signed at the beginning of our marriage. In a stack of papers his lawyer told me were just formalities. The first was a general, broad and unrestricted power of attorney, giving me full control over all his businesses and accounts. The second was the Articles of Incorporation for Fortis Holdings, the parent company that controlled everything. And there it was, in a clause I had never noticed. I was listed as the silent majority shareholder. with 51% of the shares. A tax maneuver he had made years ago to protect his assets. The irony was so thick I almost laughed. He gave me all the legal power because, in his supreme arrogance, he never imagined I would have the emotional and intellectual power to use it. The next morning, my voice on the phone was different. It wasn't the soft, hesitant voice of Anna, the wife. It was the firm voice of Anna, the shareholder. "Good morning," I said to the family lawyer. "I'd like to schedule an emergency board meeting. It's about a complete restructuring of Fortis Holdings." The silence on the other end of the line was the first note in my symphony of freedom. The scene returned to the office where the video began. The boardroom on the 32nd floor. This time, I was sitting at the head of the table. Ricardo stormed in like a hurricane, his face red with fury. "What is this nonsense, Anna?" he snarled, throwing his briefcase on the table. "The accountant called me. The lawyers won't answer me. What is this meeting you've called without my permission?" I waited for him to finish. Then, without raising my voice, I slid the stack of signed documents across the long oak table. They stopped right in front of him. "This isn't a meeting," I said, with the calm of a general on a battlefield. "It's a notification." He stared at the papers, the confusion on his face slowly turning to horror. What is this?" "That," I said, "is your new reality. The company's structure has been changed. The assets have been reallocated to a new subsidiary, of which you are not a part. And that power of attorney you had me sign 20 years ago. It was, finally, very useful." He stared at me, his eyes bloodshot. "You can't do this. You don't understand anything about business." "You're right," I agreed, a small smile touching my lips. "I didn't, but I'm a fast learner, and the first thing I learned was how to read articles of incorporation. And in them, it says that I am the majority shareholder. I built this," he yelled, slamming his fist on the table. "I built all of this while you were going to the gym. You were nothing." I stood up, walked to the panoramic window, looking out at the city that now felt like mine. "I was your wife, Ricardo, and legally, that made me the owner of most of it. You saw me as an accessory, a pretty face. Turns out, the law doesn't make that distinction." I turned to face him. The panic stamped across his face. "And do you know what the first investment of my new company will be? That project you found so cute. That sustainable luxury brand. I've even decided on the name." I paused, letting the weight of my next words settle. "It's going to be called Inheritance. The inheritance you left me months past." That office on the 32nd floor is now the headquarters of Inheritance. The atmosphere isn't cold and silent, but vibrant, full of voices, most of them female. My voice. The other day, I was leading a meeting, presenting our projections, and I found myself using words I didn't even know I knew, with a confidence I didn't even know I possessed. I didn't kill the dreamy artist. I just gave her the tools to build her own castle, one brick at a time. That painful journey taught me 3 truths that no money can buy. First, disrespect is not a slip-up. It's a policy. It's a contract the other person offers, and you have every right to refuse to sign. Second, your most important and valuable signature isn't at a notary's office, but in the silent, daily decision to respect yourself, even when no one else does. And the third truth, the most liberating of all, sometimes the best inheritance you can leave for someone who belittled you is the complete and irrevocable absence of your presence. If you, in any way, feel invisible in your own life, if your voice seems to have disappeared, look closely. Search in the details in the forgotten papers, in the strengths they made you believe you didn't have. The power to rewrite your story might be hidden right there. Sometimes you just need the right pen to sign the first chapter of your new life. I hope this story has strengthened you. If so, don't forget to like and subscribe for more empowering content. That was my plot twist. If you have ever used humiliation as fuel for your transformation, or if you believe in the power of silent independence, comment below. Tell the world that you are in control of your own script. Comment. My signature. My rules.